it's it's about the circle. Everything starts from the circle and then returns. It's all about the circle. Like the starburst 4th of July cluster, everything issues from and return backwards simultaneously to the source. Such is the mystery of life. The future in the past lies. The future in the past lies. Meditate on these things. You are now in tune. On the one, the force itself. At this time, we call it the Master Blaster Jamming. Greetings and salutations of peace. You are now in tune. On the one, the force itself. At this time, we call it the Holy Master Blaster Jamming. I am your brother, the Rastafari Ital Iman I, Underground News Network. And this discourse is entitled, We Shot Bob Marley. Behind the scenes with the film crew at the Smile Jamaica concert. This comes from, in the introduction, comes from the Beat magazine, volume 21, number 3, 2002, Bob Marley 20th anniversary, i.e. 20th annual collector's edition. But we will delve or dive deep into the assassination of the prophet Bob Marley. This is recorded for the 36th year, being May 11, 2017, since May 11, 1981. This is the 36-year memorial essay or discourse. We will dive deeply into the esoterica of his assassination. I am the Rastafari Ital Iman I for the Underground News Network. Ital Iman I was the only independent journalist to cover in its entirety the Beltway sniper trial 2003. That endeavor, coverage was picked up by the Washington Post, who covered Ital Iman I, covering the trial of the century Beltway sniper trial. So we will start this discourse by saying that Carl Cobley Jr. on conspiracy theories and the aftermath of the assassination attempt. The Beat carries an interview and story by its editor, Roger Stephens, where Carl Cobley, son of former head of CIA, tries to prove he had nothing to do with the death of Bob Marley. You are now in tune. On the one, the force itself at this time, called the Holy Master Blaster Jamming. Ital Iman I is also author of Word is Bond, the coverage of the John Muhammad trial in its entirety. Excuse me. Hello? Who's speaking? David? Yes, I. First, let us look at the one of the very first conspiracies of the Marley case. Roger Stephens claims that years ago in Canada, someone gave him a copy of a magazine called the Islamic African Correspondent, published in Ontario, and said Bob Marley
was believed to be killed by Neil Bush, son of U.S. President George Bush, who in the 70s was head of the CIA. Neil Bush impersonated the Rolling Stones writer and entered Marley's home. You can obtain a copy of the story by writing the Beat Bungo Productions, P.O. Box 65856, Los Angeles, California, 90065. I would like to note that Chris Blackwell and Carl Cobley were friends, and Cobley met Perry Henzell, the man who made the movie The Harder They Come, long before 1976, Small Jamaica concert. Now isn't that strange? The three just so happened to get together to do this shooting. It is good this information is brought forward at this time by Roger. Roger Stephens was called Roger. I'm reading from the essay in the Beat Magazine, volume 21, number 3, 2002, Bob Marley 20th Annual Collector's Edition, We Shot Bob Marley. If we study the article, we can see where Cobley could have been an operative for the CIA who shouts out the fact that his father was no longer with the CIA at the time he was involved with the Small Jamaica concert. First, we will examine a few of the facts which lays a very clear track leading to the makings of a conspiracy, which I believe Carl Cobley, Chris Blackwell, Perry Henzell, Roger Stephens, and Ross Records head, and all major media directing the Rastafari movement via reggae music. Yes, I have reason to believe they are instruments of the hidden hand. You are now in tune on the one, the force itself, at this time. We call the Master Blaster Jacket. I am your brother, the Rastafari, Ital Iman I, author of Word is Bob, The Trial of John Allen Muhammad, and author of the Holy Book of Wonder. You are now in tune. Let's now look closer at this question asked by Stephens. Did you go to school in Saigon? He's interviewing Carl Coleman. Did you go to school in Saigon? Answer, I went first to Paris Albert, which is a French Jesuit school, but there were mostly Vietnamese kids. My brother and I were the only ones who spoke English, Jesuits. Here is key word in the conspiracy code. The magazine is a must to get a clear understanding. I would like to point out one more eye-catcher here from the interview before I present to you my evidence from over 23 years of studying the event in time. Since that 23 years, it has been now 36 years. You are now into on the one, the force itself. At this time, we call it the Holy Master Blaster Jacket. All right, this interview is still going. Were you ever recruited? Roger Stephens is doing the interview. Were you ever recruited? Answer, by the CIA? No, I would be the worst possible person to be. I'm the son of the CIA director. They already know. They think that I was anyway. I wouldn't be a good agent. I wasn't interested in that. I studied philosophy. I was a filmmaker. I started making documentary films when I was at Georgetown. He was also interested in art. Now, if you examine his words, we will see that philosophy puts him in perfect light of the Bob Marley conspiracy or the Bob Marley case. Part 2. In 1992, the 100th birthday of the Emperor Haile Selassie, the 17th year of his supposed death in 1975, there was no grave, for he was not buried. He simply disappeared as his government was overthrown by the Soviet communists. On his 100th birthday, a hidden hand decided to put the death myth to rest, and it was all in bad taste. Note that the Rastafari said, "There's no grave, him no dead." So in 1992, they decided to put that to rest. On his 100th birthday, a hidden hand decided to put the death myth to rest, and it was all in bad taste. His bones were suddenly said to be found under a toilet. They were excavated and given a proper burial. Now, there is a grave which supposedly holds the bones of the 225th king of the Solomonic bloodline. In the year 1992, X marked the spot. The black man was officially and occultly died on the cross of time through a couple of symbols. Spike Lee, a pawn in the association's Skull and Bones, whose tool is Hollywood and media, etc., released the hit movie Malcolm X, a landmark production which was a topic of much debate on talk shows and even in classrooms. At that time, in the year 1992, a couple of ghetto youth, Criss Cross, C-R-I-S-S, C-R-O-S-S, became visible symbols. Their trademark, wearing their trousers backwards, loose-fitting trousers fall off their butts. This fad became mainstream. Ghetto youth were now showing their asses in public, walking about. Until this day, trousers, mainly jeans, Levi's, halfway off, a constantly pulling them up with no belt. You are now into. On the one before said so, at this time we call it the Holy Master Blaster Jack. I am your brother, the Rastafari Ital Iman. At this same time, 1992, it was introduced the baseball style caps were to be worn backwards. Esoterically, the minds of black folks were turned backwards. In 1992, X marked the spot. This was a second symbolic assassination or hanging on the cross. 11 years after the 1981 assassination of the true Christ. For it is written, X marks the spot. Note, Malcolm X broke away from the teachings of the leader Elijah Muhammad. He was then embraced by Satan, USA. As a Negro leader, there are monuments to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, save not to our true leaders such as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad or Haile Selassie. There are no memorials to Elijah Muhammad or Haile Selassie in America. But since Malcolm X broke away, he has a monument. Since Martin Luther King was soft, he has a monument. Note, the fame of Criss Cross was short-lived, but their occult meaning is imprinted on the retina of time forever. Note the name of the duo, Criss Cross, Christ on the cross. Criss Cross, Christ on the cross. Thus, X marks the spot, which takes me to the forgotten game of tic-tac-toe and the neck, i.e. next occult assassination. I must digress to show you the true spirit of it all, and we have much to cover. And keep in mind, readers, listeners, this all is to prove the hidden hand and the killing of the prophet Bob Marley. You are now into On the One, the Force itself. At this time, we call the Holy Master jamming. I'm your brother, the Rastafari Ital Iman I, for the Underground News Network and the blog spot, the Rastafari Mystery School. Emancipation Proclamation, a proclamation issued by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, equals 20, declaring free all Negro slaves in all states and territories still in rebellion against the Union. 100 years after that landmark event by the 16th president who was assassinated, the year is 1963. The 35th president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, was assassinated. He also was instrumental in black freedom and civil equal rights movements. Now, in that same year, 1963, 100 years after the freedom of slaves, there was a natural uprising, something dormant in the minds of black folks, and the hidden hand, we will call the association, could not handle it. In fear of losing their grip on their enterprise, so they, the hidden hand, once Leviathan, had a plan. They would use a scapegoat. Let us define the term. Scapegoat, a sacrificial lamb. To sacrifice is to make an offering to a deity in worship or atonement. Also, that which is offered. In the Bible, the goat upon whose head Aaron symbolically laid the sins of the people on the Day of Atonement, after which it was led away into the wilderness. Leviticus 16, and the animal person or group chosen to bear symbolically or suffer for the bad luck or sins of an individual group, meaning of scapegoat, a person bearing blame for others, etc. Let us go back and look at the numbers here. 100 years after the freeing of slaves in the American Union, the number 1 is 100. The emancipator Lincoln is on the 1 cent, the copper penny, which is the color of black people. The lowly cent represents lesser value of all the other currency, as does the Negroes to whites at that time. There is a hidden connection between currency and freedom, believe you me. There was a black revolt in 1963, naturally, and the powers that be needed someone to put out the natural fire. So they had created a puppet leader. They had occultly groomed Martin Luther King, whose 666 real name was Michael. 5 is the occult or esoteric number representing death, the 5 wounds of Christ, the so-called Lamb of God. As the Masonic Church cult want us to believe, as slaves, God sacrificed his only begotten Son for the sins of the world on the cross, etc. The emancipator, Abraham, is on, i.e., the $5 bill. He was assassinated 100 years before John Kennedy in 1963. Now, 5 years after Kennedy, in 1968, the goat or lamb of the association was slaughtered. Again, we see the occult number 5. The emancipator is on the penny and $5 bill. King was used to lull the revolt. The world thought a great leader had died. Kennedy was not one or in union with the association, what we call the Illuminati. That's why he was killed. He wanted to reveal them. He was not a pawn. King was. At the time, it appeared King was anti-government. This is the way of the so-called Illuminati. So, listener, are you one who does not believe in the metaphysical statements? What was said then by the hidden hand when Selassie's bones were supposedly found on the toilet? He ain't shit. That's what they said. When they put his bones under the toilet, buried him upside down after there was no grave, and they put out this information, this propaganda. They found him under the toilet. They say that that meant he's not shit. Let's look closer. 1863. 1 plus 8 plus 6 plus 3 equals 18. This is the same number of the mark of the beast, 666, i.e. 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18. How do we know? Lincoln put by the image, Lincoln, but by, how do we know Lincoln? But by the image of the Hasidic Jew, black hat and black uniform. Black stove top hat, black uniform. The uniform of a Hasidic Jew. 1968, 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 3 equals 24. And 2 plus 4 equals 6. This is the year King was killed, 1963. Now, Lincoln is on the 1 cent, and he is on the $5 bill. 1 plus 5 equals 6. Let's look at 1963 when Kennedy was killed. 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 3 equals 19. And 1 plus 9 equals 10. We have the magic 1 here. Kennedy killed 100 years after Lincoln. So when we cipher 1 plus 9 equals 10, we don't use the cipher, so we have 1. So we have the magic 1 here. Kennedy was killed 100 years after Lincoln. One more time. Let's look at 1963 when Kennedy was killed. 1963, 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 3 equals 19, and 1 plus 9 equals 10. So we drop the cipher, have the 1, so we have the magic 1 here. Kennedy killed 100 years after Lincoln. We're now in tune of the 1, the force itself of this time. We call it the Holy Master Blaster Devil. This is sort of a sidetrack, but let us look anyway. Bill Clinton, at the time of this writing, is now in office. His term ends 37 years after Kennedy. 3 plus 7 equals 10. So we see the magic 1 here. 137 years after Lincoln, 1 plus 3 plus 7 equals 11, and 1 plus 1 equals 2. And this energy falls on President George Bush from the old Indian prophecy. But Bush didn't die, and that same energy was transferred to Obama, but Obama made it through. So now we will dive more deeper into this pool of esoterica concerning the occult assassination of the prophet Bob Marley. Tic-tac-toe, a game for 2 players who alternately put circles or crosses in the spaces of a figure formed by 2 parallel lines crossing at right angles, 2 other parallel lines. Let's go through that one more time, and I ask you to listen attentively. Tic-tac-toe, a game for 2 players who alternately put circles or crosses in the spaces of a figure formed by 2 parallel lines crossing at right angles to other parallel lines. So many of you have played the game tic-tac-toe, each trying to get a row of 3 circles or 3 crosses before his opponent does. Also called crisscross. This game is also called crisscross. First, we must recognize that 4 lines crisscross forms a cross. If the ends are sealed, if you seal the ends, it will make a cross. A cross, as in Jesus, crucified on a cross. We will show here that the game tic-tac-toe is occultly or esoterically related to the game of soccer. First, let's find the meaning of tic-tac, a recurrent sound like that of a ticking of a clock, tick-tock. We will go to the plumb line. We will go to a plumb line, P-L-U-M-B line, and its meaning, also called plumb bob. First, plumb bob. The weight used at the end of a plumb line. The meaning of plumb line is a cord by which a weight is suspended to test the perpendicularity of depth of something. Note perpendicularity and the lines of tic-tac-toe. Such a cord regarded as indicating the direction of the Earth's center from any point on its surface. Here we see occult or esoteric relation to masonry, i.e. Freemasonry as well. If we could vision a wall as illustration, i.e. if we could vision a wall as illustration, a plumb line hanging against the wall, and B, a plumb bob at its end, we will see a certain man hanging from a rope. Of course, this takes a clear and creative mind. Plumb bob is a device to see that the wall is level. Note that if Marley were to have had his toe taken off, he would not be level, for the big toe aids in the balance of the body and to stand or to walk, etc. You need your big toe, i.e. in order to stand or walk level. Keep your eyes on Bob here in plumb bob as something hanging at the end of a line. On a level, this is an indication. Now let us look at the word plumb a little closer. We will add ism onto it, i.e. plumb-ism means lead poisoning. Now to the last word of the three, tic-tac-toe, T-O-E. One meaning is to drive a nail or spike. This meaning also indicates the game of golf, to strike a golf ball with the toe of the club. And we know the hidden meaning of the golf ball is to knock a man's head off his shoulders. The T, i.e. being the shoulders, this is alluding to esoteric racing, as a tie on a suit is a symbol of the noose around a Negro's neck. Occultly or esoterically worn by the association as indication of their occult society. Now, we all know that the toe is one of the digits on the foot, and we have all heard the old saying, toe the line. Now, to the heart of this matter, a look at men crisscrossing the field in a game of soccer or football, as it's called in Europe. Soccer, a form of football in which the ball is propelled towards the opponent's goal by kicking or striking it with the body or head. The goalkeepers being the only players allowed to touch the ball with the hands or forearms. Kicking using the toes of the foot. Soccer, officially called association football. We will see association. In this case, a body of persons associated for some common purpose. Society, league, fellowship, as in fraternal order, occult brotherhood, unity, On the one, the force itself, at this time, we call the Holy Master Examine. I am your the Rastafari Ital Iman. Now let us look back at the Rasta prophet Bob Marley. While playing soccer in France, he was spiked in his big toe with lead spikes, or cleats as it's called in football. This was an esoteric hit or assassination by the hidden association. At that point, his life was never the same. He was later diagnosed as having cancer. We must remember that it all started from the appearing accident on the soccer field, the hidden prophecy in the tic-tac-toe game, which is not in reality a game, was fulfilled as nursery rhymes, or not just for children. Great wisdom is hidden in the story of Alice in Wonderland, or Aesop fables, the old Ethiopian fables. Even the Islamic Sufis use a book of fables to find deeper wisdom, allegories, metaphors, and similes. You are now in. On the one, the force itself of this time, we call the Holy Master General. Let us look now after showing you the spike to Marley's toes at the Reader's Digest Great Encyclopedic Dictionary, print in 1966, second printing 1967. The meaning of lead poison. Poisoning caused by the absorption of lead by the tissues, characterized by anemia, muscular paralysis, etc. Also called plumbism, Saturnism. What I have indicated here is that the man who stepped on Marley's toe did not work alone. It was a deliberate hit, a ninjistic move. It was precise and to the point. The big toe of Marley was the target of a ninja. As we know, the big toe controls balance, as in plumb line and plumb bob. This was the esoteric and occult workings of the association. We are saying that Bob Marley died on the cross, as it is written of Jesus. He was crucified by the Roman soldiers who worked for the Jews. Association, Illuminati, one world order, Satan, devil, the Pope, etc. We will show you why in the following. You are now into on the one, the force itself. At this time, we call the Holy Master Blaster Gemini. I am your brother Rastafari Ital Iman. Yes, I am. We have seen CIA documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act that the government of Jamaica used him for their ends and tried to slander his name. He was also given a high honor in Jamaica. At the same time, the government officials was to receive an honor. This move took the light off the dignitaries. Please note, after the attempt on Marley's life, where he was shot in the chest just below the heart, and the bullet went into his arm, and wife Rita Marley was shot in the head. Another one of the party was shot in the spine. After Marley was released from the hospital, after talking briefly with Michael Manley, Prime Minister at University College Hospital, Marley was hustled away under police protection and escorted to the secluded encampment in the Blue Mountains above Kingston. No one knew his whereabouts. Rasta guarded him, but one of the film crew of a small Jamaica concert that was to be the next day made his way to the encampment. This man was Carl Colby, son of CIA Director William Colby. Roberta Flack, a witch instrumental in the killing of Donny Hathaway, also came up to check him. Manning, the walkie-talkie, was Ebo and Cat, keyboardist and lead guitarist, respectively, of the Third World Band. These musicians are educated musical scientists who are very commercial. They are like PhDs of universities in the music world, and very important to the government. They would be allowed to go in on occult and clandestine projects, etc. In the music world, if government had a top secret project, these are the type men they would call upon for help. Some of the Rastas were naive, had no idea son of CIA director had made his way up. Note, while playing soccer in Paris with the top French team in May 1977, during the European leg of the Exodus tour, he had injured his right toe again during a bad tackle. The toenail was torn off again. It seems minor at first, reporter said. This time the lesion did not heal. For it was written back in Delaware, Bob told his mother all he had learned about his religion. He told her that it was Selassie who came to him in a dream when he was young. And years later in London, his grandson had gave Bob that same ring the men gave him in the dream. And we all know that story. And it was written. One thing Bob did not tell his mother is that he had learned his name, that he knew his name. He told his friend that Christ's mission started at 33, and he told his childhood friend Dion that he, Bob, would live a life just like Christ, and that he would die at the age of 36, year and hour or two, on the one, the force itself. Now this time he called the Holy Master death. I am your brother, the Rastafari, Ital Iman. Let us now go back up to what was written about plumbism. In this case, what was said about plumbism, Plumbism. The following is spoken from the book chapter 5, chapter Exodus, page 307. On Sunday morning, September 21, Bob and Skilly had gone jogging in Central Park to get Bob energized. The night after his second show of his Madison Square Garden concert series with the Commodores, Bob had awakened in a daze. He had trouble remembering the show, even the fact he had almost passed out during the show. Both after the concert and the morning he had been offered cocaine and freebase by some very heavy drug hustlers from Brooklyn who had attacked themselves to the whalers since they had come fresh from England in support of the uprising tour. In the course of the last 12 months, Marley has seen the Rasta scene go down in Jamaica. Crack cocaine had hit the island since Seago had been elected. The reason behind Seago's victory was clear. He was the darling of the right-wing American corporate powers, the same people who were ushering Ronald Wilson Reagan into the office. Seago would clearly be Reagan's man, David Rockefeller, and the other architects of the Caribbean Basin Initiative. Reagan wanted the island cleaned up. He wanted to stamp out the cash crop of ganja, along with the help of the Jamaican Labor Party, JLP. So the starving ganja dealers turned to the cocaine trade, etc. During the 1980 elections, 700 people were shot in the streets, fighting to control the new ideas, etc. The older and the devoted Rastas went up to the hills and found time to find the 666 in numbers and letters, the name of Ronald 6, Wilson 6, Reagan 6. I believe he was Antichrist. As Bob was running around the pond near Central Park South that Sunday morning, he felt his body freezing. He felt his body freezing up on him. He turned to Skilly. Something was wrong, but his neck suddenly became rigid. He could not speak. He was unable to move his head as he fell forward. Bob had a stroke. Note that just before noon, May 11, 1981, only 14 hours after he left Germany, he died. In the book Bob Marley, Song of Freedom, the question is asked, in interpreting his life as that of the Messiah, the cancer that killed him is inevitably described as a modern version of a crucifixion. Although the disease possibly did have its origin in a barely treated football injury, conspiracy theories still abound. Was Bob Marley's body poisoned still further when going through the medical checkup in Brooklyn, London, Miami, and New York? Were his hotel rooms or homes bombarded with cancer-inducing rays? Or more simply, was Bob's system slowly poisoned by the lead bullet that remained in his body after the 1976 attempt on his life? Bob was born in the year 1945. Please note, again, the number 11, and the month of May. For Marley died on May 11, 1988, i.e. May 11, 1981. Please note, Marley met Dr. Carl P. Frazier, recommended to him by fellow Rastafarians. Dr. Frazier advised that Marley talk to Dr. Yosef Ital. Check this out. A holistic, comprehensive immunotherapist, then practicing at the Ringberg Clinic in Rastafari, a small Bavarian village located at the southern end of Tjimi Lake. Marley traveled to Bavaria and checked into the clinic. It was found that this man was a white supremacist with links to Hitler's death camps. Now, one thing we must know is that Hitler was a Jew, and his money he used to work with came from Jewish bankers. Research the Dr. Ital's, and we will find that he also was a Jew. Now let us look back at the persons who recommended this move to the prophet. All are involved in the death if this matter is viewed rightly. We must realize that the association, those that many call the Illuminati, has operatives working directly or indirectly, covertly and overtly. We also see that Marley knew he would die such a death, and being a Rasta, we should be wise to the ways of Babylon. And the elder Rastas should have took care of Mr. Marley. It has been reported that large needles were stuck in Marley's navel all the way to his spine. That Marley died a horrible death at the hands of Dr. Ital's or Ital's. It says Marley's mother also witnessed this. Some reports state, some believe Marley was killed by the Third Reich. I tell you in this report that this matter is over 6,000 years old. He was killed by the same people who killed Jesus. As the story goes, and yes, the Third Reich had the sword of destiny. These are the same Jews who wrote the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. Same ones who financed Karl Marx. Read the Communist Manifesto and see, does it not read the same tenor as the protocols of Zion? I have given you, O listeners, a clear outline of this matter, which is just as much metaphysical as physical. So in our view, the Dr. Ital just put the finishing touches on the prophet. And I say all who are involved are guilty, even down to Rita Marley. We can say that Marley was killed somewhat by the ignorance of his own friends and family. Evil is oftentimes ignorance, not knowing itself to be so. Here in this work, we have put a lid on the mystery surrounding who killed our prophet Bob Marley. The beast killed him, 666. The cross cannot be said to come from one Roman soul. Many play their part in this drama. Rastafari bring the hidden things to the light. It is true, and I tell you, Marley died for the sins of I and I. He said, no bullet can stop us now. You are now in tune on the one, the force itself, the Holy Master is Blaster Jamming. I am your brother, Rastafari Ital